The methane storm hit Hala 7 like an angry god. Wind screamed across the frozen plains, carrying ice and poison gas that could kill an unprotected man in minutes. The sky turned green and black, and the temperature dropped so low that even the rocks cracked from the cold. Duhan watched the storm through his small window. His homestead was built half underground, the way all frontier homes were built on this harsh moon. Thick walls of compressed earth and metal kept the worst of the cold out, but he could still feel the chill creeping through the cracks. His heating unit was old and tired, just like everything else he owned. He was a simple man, 28 years old, with rough hands and a weathered face that made him look older. He had come to Hala 7 5 years ago with dreams of building something for himself. The Galactic Council gave land grants to anyone brave enough or desperate enough to settle the frontier moons. Dawn had been both. Now he lived alone in a small house with a small farm, growing hardy vegetables that could survive the brutal climate. It was not much of a life, but it was his life, and he had learned to find peace in its simplicity. The storm grew worse. Dawn checked his door seals one more time, making sure no gas could leak inside. He added another log to his small fire and sat down to eat his dinner. Potato soup, same as yesterday, same as tomorrow. He did not mind. Food was food. That was when he heard the scratching. At first, he thought it was just the wind. Debris often hit his door during storms. But the sound came again, and this time it was different. It was weak and desperate, like something alive was trying to get in. Dohan stood up slowly. His heart beat faster. Nothing survived outside during a methane storm. Nothing should be at his door. He grabbed his breathing mask and pulled it over his face. Then he took his old rifle from the wall. It was a farming tool more than a weapon, used for scaring away the wild creatures that sometimes came down from the mountains. But it made him feel safer. He went to the door and listened. The scratching came again, weaker now. Then he heard something that made his blood freeze. A voice. Faint and broken, barely more than a whisper. Please. Dawn did not think. He just acted. He hit the emergency release on his door and pulled it open just enough to look outside. The wind nearly knocked him down. Ice and gas swirled around him, burning his exposed skin. But he barely noticed, because all his attention was on the figure collapsed at his doorstep. It was a woman. At least she looked like a woman. But her skin shimmered with scales of silver and gold, catching the faint light from inside his home. 2 small horns rose from her forehead, curved and elegant. Her eyes, half closed and filled with pain, were the color of molten copper. She was covered in blood. Her fine robes, which looked like they cost more than everything Dohan owned, were torn to pieces. Frost was forming on her scales, and her breathing was shallow and weak. She was dying. But Dohan did not hesitate. He grabbed her under the arms and pulled her inside, then slammed the door shut against the screaming storm. The woman was heavier than she looked, but fear and adrenaline gave him strength. He dragged her to the fire and laid her down on his sleeping mat. Up close, he could see how bad her wounds were. Deep cuts across her arms and back, like something had tried to tear her apart. Burn marks on her side, the kind that came from energy weapons. Whatever had happened to her, it had been violent and terrible. Dohan grabbed his medical kit. It was basic, meant for treating farming accidents, not wounds like these. But it was all he had. He cleaned her cuts as best he could and wrapped them with bandages. He gave her water, dripping it slowly into her mouth when she was too weak to drink. Hours passed. The storm raged outside. Dohan sat beside the strange woman and watched her breathe. Afraid each breath would be her last. Near midnight, her eyes opened. For a moment, she just stared at the ceiling, confused and afraid. Then her gaze found Dawn, and something changed in her expression. Her fear became cold and hard, like a wall going up around her heart. She tried to sit up, but pain stopped her. She gasped and fell back, her hand going to her wounded side. "Do not move," Doan said gently. "You are hurt badly. You need to rest." The woman looked at him with those copper eyes. There was no trust in them, only calculation. She was measuring him, trying to figure out what he wanted. "Where am I?" she asked. Her voice was rough and dry. "My home. On HFY 7. I found you outside my door. The storm. Still going. You are safe here." The woman was silent for a long moment. Then, with great effort, she reached for a pouch in her belt. Her hands were shaking as she opened it and poured its contents onto the floor. Gems spilled out. Rubies and sapphires and stones that Dohan did not even recognize. They glittered in the firelight like captured stars. There was enough wealth there to buy his entire farm 100 times over. "For your trouble," the woman said, her voice cold and formal. "Payment for shelter and medical care. Name your additional price, and I will see it paid when I am able." Dohan stared at the gems. He had never seen such wealth in his entire life. With those stones, he could leave this frozen moon. He could buy a ship, travel to the core worlds, live in comfort for the rest of his days. Then he looked at the woman. At her wounds, her exhaustion, her fear, hidden behind walls of pride. She expected him to take advantage of her. She was waiting for him to name some terrible price, to demand something in exchange for basic kindness. Something in Dohan's chest hurt at the thought. He reached down and carefully gathered the gems. Then he put them back in her pouch and placed it beside her. "Keep your gold," he said quietly. "You are hurt, and it is cold outside. That is reason enough to help you." The woman stared at him. For the first time, her cold mask cracked, and he saw genuine confusion underneath. "I do not understand," she said slowly. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing. Everyone wants something." Doan shrugged. "I want you to rest and heal. That is all." He stood up and went to his small kitchen area. He poured some of his soup into a bowl and brought it back to her, along with a cup of clean water. "Eat if you can," he said. "Sleep if you cannot. We can talk more in the morning." The woman took the bowl with trembling hands. She looked at the soup, then at Doan, then back at the soup. She seemed completely lost, like someone who had been given a puzzle with no solution. Finally, she began to eat. Dohan sat down in his chair by the fire and wrapped himself in his old blanket. He would not sleep in his bed tonight. She needed it more than he did. Outside, the storm continued to rage. Inside, the fire crackled and popped. The strange woman ate her soup in silence, stealing glances at Doan when she thought he was not looking. She did not understand him. In her world, kindness was always a transaction. Compassion was always a trick. No one gave anything without expecting something in return. But this human, this poor farmer with his rough hands and simple home, had pulled her from death and asked for nothing. He had refused her gold and given her his bed and his food. It made no sense to her. She finished the soup and set the bowl aside. Exhaustion was pulling at her, dragging her down into darkness. But before she slept, she spoke one more time. "My name is Yuna," she said quietly. Dohan looked at her and smiled. It was a small smile, warm and genuine. "I am Doan. Rest now, Yuna. You are safe here." She wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him that she was never safe. That danger followed her like a shadow. That being near her would only bring him suffering. But sleep took her before she could speak. And for the first time in many weeks, her dreams were not filled with blood and fire. The storm lasted 3 more days. During that time, Yuna drifted in and out of sleep, her body fighting to heal itself. Dohan stayed close, changing her bandages, giving her water, and feeding her soup whenever she was awake enough to eat. He did not ask questions. He did not demand explanations. He simply cared for her like she was a sick neighbor. Nothing more and nothing less. This confused Yuna more than anything else. Thought she was Rukin, one of the dragon people who ruled a vast empire across dozens of star systems. Her kind were ancient and powerful. They could shift between humanoid form and their true dragon bodies. They breathed fire and lived for thousands of years. Other species feared them, worshipped them, or tried to destroy them. No one simply helped them. On the fourth day, Yuna was strong enough to sit up on her own. She watched Dohan as he moved around his small home, doing his daily tasks. He fixed a broken tool. He checked his food storage. He read from an old book with a cracked cover. Simple things. Quiet things. "You have no technology," she said suddenly. Dohan looked up from his book. "I have some. The heating unit. The water purifier. But I cannot afford much. Your species has faster than light travel. You have colonized hundreds of worlds. Yet you live like this?" There was no judgment in her voice, only curiosity. Dohan did not seem offended. "The frontier is for people who have nothing," he explained. "The rich stay in the core worlds, where everything is easy. Out here, you take what you can get, and you make it work." "Why did you come here?" Dohan was quiet for a moment. He closed his book and set it aside. "I grew up on Earth," he said. "In a city so crowded you could not see the sky. My family was poor. My father worked in a factory until the machines replaced him. My mother cleaned houses for rich people who never learned her name. When they died, I had nothing. No money, no home, no future." He looked around his small house with something like pride. "Here, I have land. I have a home I built with my own hands. It is not much, but it is mine. No one can take it from me." Yuna thought about this. In her world, everything was about power and politics. Land was taken and given based on strength and favor. The idea of a place that was simply yours, earned through honest work, was strange to her. "You are content with this life?" she asked. Duhan smiled. "Content enough. It is honest. It is quiet. There is no one trying to use me or hurt me. After the life I had before, that is enough." Days passed. Yuna grew stronger. Her wounds closed and her scales regained their shine. Soon she could walk around the small house, though she still tired quickly. During this time, she began to tell Dohon her story. Not all at once, but in pieces, like a puzzle slowly coming together. She told him about the Ryukan Empire, ruled for 10,000 years by her family, the House of the Golden Flame. She told him about her childhood in the Great Palace, learning to breathe fire and fly among the stars. She told him about her mother, the Empress, who was wise and kind and loved by her people. Then she told him about her aunt, Soren. She was always hungry for power, Yuna said, her voice bitter. She smiled and played the loyal sister, but behind her eyes, there was only ambition. She waited and planned and gathered allies in the shadows. What happened? Yuna's hands clenched into fists. 6 months ago, she struck. Her soldiers attacked the palace in the night. They killed my mother. They killed my brothers and sisters. They killed everyone loyal to our house. Her voice broke, and she had to stop for a moment. Dohan waited quietly, not pushing her to continue. I escaped, Yuna finally said. I do not even know how. I just ran. I flew through fire and death, and I ran. I have been running ever since. Soren has sent hunters after me. She will not rest until I am dead, because as long as I live, her claim to the throne is not complete. That is why you were hurt when I found you, Dohan said. The hunters... Yes, they caught up with me 2 days before the storm. I killed some of them, but there were too many. I barely escaped to this moon. I thought I would die in that storm. Part of me wanted to. She looked at Dohan with those copper eyes, and for once, there were no walls hiding her pain. Then you opened your door. Dohan did not know what to say. What could he say? He was a poor farmer on a forgotten moon. He knew nothing about empires and thrones and ancient dragon wars. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "About your family. About everything." Yuna blinked. Again, she seemed confused by his simple kindness. "You are strange," she said. "Any other person would ask how they could benefit from helping me. You could demand wealth. You could demand power. When I reclaim my throne, I could give you anything you wanted. I do not want anything. Everyone wants something." "You said that before." Dohan leaned back in his chair. "And I will tell you again. I do not want anything from you. I helped you because you needed help. That is all. But why? You do not know me. I am not your kind. Why would you risk anything for a stranger?" Dohan thought about this for a long time. Outside, the wind blew across the frozen plains, gentler now that the storm had passed. "When I was young," he said slowly, "my father lost his job. We had no money for food. We were going to starve. Then a neighbor, an old woman who had almost nothing herself, brought us rice. She did not ask for payment. She did not want anything from us. She just saw that we were hungry, and she helped." He looked at Yuna. "I never forgot that. A small kindness from someone who had nothing saved my family. I decided then that if I ever had the chance to be that person for someone else, I would take it." Yuna stared at him. In her long life, she had met warriors and kings, scholars and priests. She had seen courage and cruelty in equal measure. But she had never met anyone like this simple human farmer. "You are a fool," she said quietly. "Kindness like yours will get you killed." "Maybe," Doan agreed. "But I would rather die a fool who helped people than live as a wise man who turned away from suffering." Yuna had no answer to that night. She could not sleep. She lay on Dohan's bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything he had said. In her world, compassion was weakness. Trust was a weapon used against you. She had been raised to be strong, to be suspicious, to always look for the trap. But there was no trap here. Just a poor man with a warm fire and a bowl of soup, asking for nothing. Something inside her began to change. It was small at first, like the first crack in a wall of ice. But it was there, and it was growing. For the first time since the massacre of her family, Yuna felt something other than fear and anger. She felt hope that maybe not all the universe was darkness and betrayal. Maybe there were still good people in it. People who helped strangers simply because it was right. Maybe, just maybe. This poor human farmer had shown her something worth fighting for. When she finally slept, her dreams were peaceful. And in those dreams, she saw a future where she was not running anymore. A future where she was free. 2 weeks had passed since the storm. Yuna was almost fully healed now, her dragon blood making her recover faster than any human could. She spent her days helping Doan around the farm. Even though he insisted she did not have to dot, it felt strange to do simple work. Pulling vegetables from the frozen ground. Fixing broken fences. Carrying water from the purifier. These were tasks far beneath a princess of the Ryukin Empire. But Yuna found that she did not mind. There was something peaceful about honest labor. No politics. No scheming. No fear of knives in the dark. Just the work in the cold wind and the quiet company of a man who expected nothing from her dot. She was starting to understand why Dom loved this life. One morning, Dohan said he needed to go to town. The nearest settlement was called Jinsol Station, a small trading post about 3 hours' walk from his farm. He went there once a month to trade vegetables for supplies he could not make himself. "I will be back before dark," he told Yuna. "Stay hidden." Do not let anyone see you. Yuna nodded. She knew the danger. If anyone recognized what she was, word would spread fast. The hunters would come. She watched Dohan disappear over the horizon, then went back inside to wait. The hours passed slowly. Yuna tried to read one of Dohan's books, but she could not focus. A bad feeling had settled in her stomach, a sense of danger that she had learned to trust over years of running. Something was wrong. She went to the window and looked out at the empty plains. The sky was clear and pale blue. Nothing moved except the wind. But the feeling would not go away. When Dahan finally appeared on the horizon, he was walking fast, almost running. Yuna's heart began to beat faster. He burst through the door, breathing hard, his face pale with fear. "They are here," he said. "In the town. Asking questions." Yuna felt the blood drain from her face. "The hunters?" "They did not say, but they are looking for someone. A woman with scales and horns. They are offering a reward for information." He grabbed her hands. "You have to run. Now, before they come here." Yuna's mind raced. She could run. She was strong enough now to fly, to escape to another world, to keep running like she had been running for months. But she looked at Dahan's face, at his fear and his worry, and she knew something had changed inside her. "If I run, they will question everyone nearby," she said slowly. "They will come here. They will hurt you. I can handle myself." "No, you cannot. These are not ordinary men. They are trained killers, armed with weapons that can hurt even my kind. They will torture you for information. They might kill you just to send a message." Dawan's jaw tightened. "Then I will lie to them. I will tell them I saw you heading east, toward the mountains. That should buy you time. They will know you are lying. Then they will know." His eyes met hers, steady and unafraid. "I have lived my whole life as a nobody. If I die protecting someone who matters, at least my death will mean something." Yuna felt something twist in her chest. This man, this poor human farmer, was willing to die for her. Not for a reward, not for power, just because he believed it was right. In her entire long life, no one had ever offered her such a gift. "You are a fool," she whispered. "So you keep telling me." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Yuna made a decision. "I will not run," she said. "Not this time. If they come, I will face them." "Yuna, no. There are too many. Even in your true form, you cannot fight them all." "Maybe not. But I am tired of running. I am tired of letting others suffer for me." She reached up and touched his face gently. "You showed me that some things are worth fighting for. Now let me show you that some people are worth protecting." Before Doan could argue, they heard the sound of engines in the distance. They both went to the window. A ship was descending from the sky, sleek and black and covered in weapons. It landed on the plains about half a kilometer away, and figures began to emerge. There were 8 of them. They wore dark armor and carried energy rifles. At their head walked a tall man with a scarred face and cold, empty eyes. Captain Taiho. Yuna recognized him. He was the most dangerous bounty hunter in 3 star systems, known for never failing a contract. Empress Soren must have paid him a fortune to hunt her down. "Stay inside," Yuna said to Dawn. "No matter what happens. Stay inside. I will not hide while you fight alone. Please." She gripped his hands tightly. "If I fall, someone needs to tell the galaxy what happened here. Someone needs to remember that a human showed a dragon what kindness truly means. Will you do that for me?" Dawn wanted to refuse. Every part of him screamed to stand beside her, to fight even though he knew he would die. But he saw the desperation in her eyes, and he understood. "I will remember," he promised. "I will tell everyone." Yuna smiled. It was a sad smile, but also peaceful. "Thank you, Dawn, for everything." She walked out the door before he could say anything else. The hunters saw her immediately. They stopped their advance and raised their weapons. Captain Taiho stepped forward, his scarred face twisting into something like a smile. "Princess Yuna," he called out, "you have led us on quite a chase. The Empress will be pleased to see your head." "Come and take it then," Yuna replied. Her voice was calm, but inside, her dragon fire was building, burning, ready to explode. "There is no need for violence. Surrender now, and I promise your death will be quick. Fight, and I will make you suffer." Yuna laughed. It was a cold, bitter sound. "I am the last daughter of the House of the Golden Flame. My ancestors conquered empires and burned cities to ash. Do you think I fear pain?" Taiho's smile faded. "So be it." He raised his hand to signal the attack. Inside the house, the Han watched through the window, his heart pounding. He wanted to run outside, to do something, anything. But he had made a promise, and he would keep it. No matter what happened next. The hunters began to move forward, weapons ready, and Yuna closed her eyes, reaching deep inside herself for the fire that had burned in her blood since the day she was born. It was time to stop running. It was time to fight. The ground beneath her feet began to crack and glow with heat. Steam rose from the frozen earth. The air around her shimmered and distorted. The hunters hesitated. Then Yuna opened her eyes, and they were no longer copper. They were burning gold, filled with ancient fire. "Run," she said quietly. "Run now, and I will let you live." Captain Taiho snarled and fired his weapon. The bolt of energy flew toward Yuna's heart, but it never reached her. Because in that moment, she changed. Her body erupted with light and heat and power, bones breaking and reforming, skin splitting to reveal scales of silver and gold. She grew and grew, until she towered over the hunters like a mountain of fire. Where the princess had stood, a dragon now rose, and she was angry. The dragon that Yuna became was beautiful and terrible. Her body stretched 30 meters from nose to tail, covered in scales that shimmered like liquid metal. Great wings spread from her back, blocking out the pale sun. Her eyes burned with golden fire, and when she opened her mouth, heat waves distorted the air. The hunters froze. Even Captain Taiho, who had killed 100 dangerous creatures in his career, took a step back. But he was a professional. He recovered quickly. "Fire!" he shouted. "All weapons, fire now!" 8 energy rifles opened up at once. Blue bolts of plasma streaked toward Yuna, each one powerful enough to punch through starship armor. They hit her scales and exploded in bursts of light. Yuna roared in pain. The shots hurt, leaving black marks on her silver scales. But she did not fall. Dragon blood was ancient and powerful, hardened by millions of years of evolution on a world of fire and stone. She swept her tail across the ground. 2 hunters flew through the air, their bodies broken by the impact. They did not get up. Another hunter tried to circle around behind her. Yuna spun and caught him in her jaws, her teeth cutting through his armor like paper. She tossed him aside and turned to face the others. 3 down. 5 remaining. Captain Taiho pulled out a larger weapon from his back. It was a dragon killer, a massive rifle designed specifically to hurt her kind. The Empress must have given it to him, knowing who he was hunting. He aimed and fired. The shot hit Yuna in the chest. This time, she screamed. The dragon killer tore through her scales and burned deep into her flesh, spreading poison through her blood. She stumbled, her great body wavering. "Again!" Taiho shouted. "Hit her again before she recovers." The remaining hunters concentrated their fire on her wounded chest. Bolt after bolt slammed into the same spot, widening the wound, driving her back step by step. Yuna felt her strength fading. The poison was working fast, spreading cold through her veins. Her vision blurred. Her wings drooped. She thought about giving up. It would be easy to just fall, to let the darkness take her, to finally rest after months of running and fighting in fear. Then she heard a voice. Leave her alone. Dahun ran out of his house, holding his old farming tool like a weapon. He had broken his promise. He could not stay hidden while she died. Captain Taiho laughed. It was an ugly sound, cruel and mocking. What is this? A human defending a dragon? He gestured to one of his men. Kill him. Make it slow. Let the princess watch. The hunter turned toward Dawn, raising his rifle. Something inside Yuna snapped. She had run from the massacre of her family. She had fled across the stars while everything she loved was destroyed. She had lived with the shame of being the one who survived, the one who was too weak to save anyone. But she would not let this happen. Not to him. Not to the one person in the entire universe who had shown her kindness without wanting anything in return. With a roar that shook the ground, Yuna found strength she did not know she had. She lunged forward, ignoring the agony in her chest, ignoring the poison freezing her blood. Her jaws closed around the hunter before he could fire. She threw him into another, and both went down in a tangle of limbs and broken armor. Then she turned on Captain Taiho. He was fast, diving aside as she breathed fire at him. The flames melted the frozen ground into glass, just missing him. He rolled to his feet and fired the dragon killer again. The shot hit her wing. Yuna felt the bones shatter. She crashed to the ground, unable to fly, unable to run. Taiho walked toward her slowly, loading another shot into his weapon. You fought well, he admitted. Better than I expected. But it ends here, princess. Yuna tried to rise, but her body would not obey. The poison had spread too far. Her vision was fading to black at the edges. But then she saw Dawn. He had picked up a dead hunter's rifle. He did not know how to use it properly. His hands were shaking, but he stood between her and Taiho, pointing the weapon at the bounty hunter's chest. Get away from her, Dawn said. His voice trembled, but he did not move. Taiho stopped. For a moment, he just stared at the human like he was looking at something he could not understand. You would die for this creature? He asked. She is not a creature. She is my friend. She is a dragon. Her kind have enslaved and killed millions. What could you possibly owe her? Dawn's grip on the rifle tightened. I owe her nothing. That is the point. I do not help her because I owe her. I help her because it is right. Taiho shook his head slowly. Humans. I will never understand your species. He raised the dragon killer. Dawn fired first. The shot went wide, missing Taiho completely. The human had never fired a weapon like this in his life. He did not stand a chance, but the shot distracted Taiho for just 1 second. 1 second was enough. Yuna gathered every last bit of her strength. She opened her mouth and released all the fire left in her body in a single, desperate blast. The flames engulfed Taiho completely. He screamed, a terrible sound that echoed across the frozen plains. Then he was gone, nothing left but ash and melted armor. The last 2 hunters ran. They did not look back. They fled to their ship and took off, disappearing into the sky like frightened birds. Ona collapsed. Her dragon form began to fade, her body shrinking back to its humanoid shape. She lay on the scorched ground, barely breathing, blood pooling around her from a dozen wounds. Dawn dropped the rifle and ran to her. He fell to his knees beside her, lifting her head into his lap. Yuna! Yuna, stay with me. Her eyes fluttered open. They were copper again, dim and tired. You broke your promise, she whispered. You were supposed to stay inside. I am a fool, remember? She tried to laugh, but it turned into a cough. Blood stained her lips. You saved me, she said. Again. How many times will you save me, Dohon of Hala 7? As many times as it takes. Yuna smiled. It was the most genuine smile she had ever given anyone. I do not deserve you, she said. But I am glad I found you. Her eyes closed. For a terrible moment, Dahan thought she was dead, but her chest still rose and fell, slowly, weakly. She was alive, barely. He gathered her in his arms and carried her back to his house. He did not know if she would survive. He did not know if more hunters would come. He did not know what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain. He would not give up. On her, not Nadaver. He laid her on his bed and began treating her wounds the same way he had done weeks ago. When she had first appeared at his door, he cleaned the blood. He bandaged the cuts. He stayed beside her through the long night, watching her breathe, praying to whatever gods existed that she would wake up again. Outside, the wind blew across the battlefield. Bodies of the hunters lay scattered on the scorched ground. A dragon had fought here, and a human had stood beside her. Neither had been willing to let the other die alone. That meant something. In a universe full of cruelty and greed and betrayal, that simple truth meant everything. And somewhere across the stars, word of what happened on Hala 7 would begin to spread. A princess who fought against impossible odds. A human who refused to abandon her. A story that would change everything. Yuna almost died 3 times during the week after the battle. Her wounds were deep, and the poison from the dragon killer had spread through her entire body. Dawn did not sleep. He stayed beside her every hour, giving her water, changing her bandages, talking to her even when she could not hear him. He told her about his childhood on Earth. He told her about his parents and the old woman who had saved his family with a bag of rice. He told her about his dreams of finding a place where he belonged, a place where he could live in peace. He told her that she could not die, because he was not finished telling her stories yet. On the 7th day, Yuna opened her eyes. They were clear and bright, the copper color rich and warm. She looked at Dohan, at his tired face and the dark circles under his eyes, and she reached up to touch his cheek. You look terrible, she said. Duhan laughed. It was a broken sound, full of relief and exhaustion. You almost died, and that is what you say to me? I am a princess. I expect good presentation. He laughed again, and this time tears rolled down his face. He did not try to hide them. Yuna recovered slowly. Her dragon blood healed her wounds, but the poison took longer to clear. She spent her days resting and her evenings sitting by the fire with Dawn, talking about everything and nothing. Then, 3 weeks after the battle, the ships began to arrive. The first one landed at dawn. Yuna saw it through the window and immediately reached for a weapon, thinking more hunters had come. But when the figures emerged, she froze. They were Ryukin. Not hunters, but warriors wearing the old colors of her family, the gold and silver of the House of the Golden Flame. At their head walked an old Dragonwoman with scales of deep bronze, her eyes sharp and wise. Lady Myrae, Yuna breathed. She ran outside, still weak but no longer caring. Lady Myrae had been her mother's closest friend, a general who had fought in a dozen wars. She had thought Myrae was dead, killed in the massacre with everyone else. Princess. Myrae dropped to one knee, her warriors following. We have been searching for you for months. When we heard what happened on this moon, we knew you were alive. How did you hear? The survivors. Myrae's lips curled in a grim smile. 2 of Taiho's hunters escaped. They told everyone who would listen about the princess who transformed into a dragon and burned their captain to ash. About the human farmer who stood between a bounty hunter and a wounded dragon with nothing but a stolen rifle. She looked past Yuna to where Dohan stood in the doorway of his house, watching with wide eyes. The story spread across the sector in days. To us, it was hope. To Empress Soren, It was a threat. More ships arrived over the following weeks. Warriors and scholars, refugees and rebels. All of them loyal to Yuna's murdered family. All of them ready to fight. They expected to find a war camp. They expected to find a princess planning revenge, building an army, preparing to reclaim her throne with fire and blood. Instead, they found her helping a human farmer fix his fence. Yuna stood before them in simple clothes, her scales dusty from work, her hands dirty with soil. Dahan stood beside her, looking deeply uncomfortable at all the attention. "I know why you are here," Yuna said to the assembled Ryukin. "You want me to lead you against Soren. You want revenge for our fallen families. You want to restore the old empire." She paused, looking out at the hundreds of faces watching her. "But I am not the same princess who fled the palace 6 months ago. I have learned something on this frozen moon. I have learned it from this man." She took Dahan's hand. He tried to pull away, embarrassed, but she held firm. "When I came to his door, I was dying. I offered him gold for shelter because that is all I knew. In my world, everything is a transaction. Kindness is a trick. Trust is a weapon. But this human refused my gold. He gave me his bed and his food and his care, asking for nothing in return." Her voice grew stronger. "I did not understand. I asked him why, again and again. And he told me that someone once showed kindness to his family when they had nothing. That small act saved them. He decided that if he ever had the chance to be that person for someone else, he would take it." She looked at Dawn, and her eyes were soft. "He taught me that compassion is not weakness. That kindness given freely is the greatest strength in the universe. That leadership is not about power or control, but about serving those who trust you." She turned back to the crowd. "I will reclaim the Ember Throne. I will defeat Soren and bring justice for our fallen. But when I sit upon that throne, I will not rule as my ancestors ruled. I will not build an empire of fear and conquest." Her voice rang out across the frozen plains. "I will build an empire of compassion. An empire where the strong protect the weak, where kindness is honored more than wealth, where no one is left to freeze outside closed doors. This is my promise to you. This is the empire I will create." The Ryukin were silent. Many of them had expected fire and rage, promises of vengeance and blood. This was something different, something they had never heard from a ruler of their kind. Lady Myrae was the first to respond. She dropped to one knee again, but this time her voice was thick with emotion. "I followed your mother because she was strong. I will follow you because you are wise. Command us, princess. We are yours." One by one, the other Ryukin knelt. Warriors and refugees, old and young. They pledged their loyalty not to a conqueror, but to a leader who had learned the true meaning of strength from a poor human farmer. The war against Soren lasted 2 years. It was long and bloody, as all wars are. Many brave warriors fell on both sides. Cities burned and worlds were scarred. But in the end, Yuna stood in the great throne room of the Ryukin Palace, Emperor Soren dead at her feet. She climbed the steps to the Ember Throne and sat upon it, feeling the weight of 10,000 years of history pressing down on her dot and beside the throne. In a simple chair that looked completely out of place in that grand hall, sat Dahan. He wore plain clothes. He still had rough hands and a weathered face. He had refused every title and every gift that Yuna tried to give him. He only wanted one thing, to stay by her side. Years passed. Empress Yuna ruled Ryukin with wisdom and compassion. She ended the old traditions of conquest and tribute. She built schools and hospitals. She signed peace treaties with former enemies. Under her rule, the Ryukin Empire transformed into something new, something better. And always, Dahan was there. Not as a consort or a politician, but as a friend. A reminder. A conscience. When ambassadors from other species visited the palace, they often asked about him. Why did the most powerful ruler in the galaxy keep a simple human so close? What was his role? What power did he hold? Yuna always smiled at these questions. He holds no power, she would say. He holds something more important. He holds my memory of who I was when I had nothing, and who I wanted to become. One day, an ambassador from the Human Federation asked Yuna directly why she valued humanity so highly. After all, humans were young and weak compared to the ancient dragon race. Yuna looked at Dawn, who was sitting in his usual chair, reading one of his old books. Humans have a gift, she said slowly. They choose kindness when the universe expects cruelty. They stand against impossible odds for people they barely know. They believe in goodness even when every experience tells them they should not. She smiled, warmth filling her ancient eyes. One human showed me that destiny is not written in stars or bloodlines. It is written in choices. Small choices made every day. The choice to open a door during a storm. The choice to share food when you have little. The choice to stand in front of a dragon killer with nothing but courage and love. She looked at the ambassador steadily. That is why humanity will inherit the stars. Not because of your technology or your numbers, but because when the universe is cold and dark, you choose to be warm. You choose to be light. She reached over and took Dawn's hand. He looked up from his book and smiled at her, the same simple smile he had given her on that first night. And that, Empress Yuna of the Rukin said, is the greatest power in all the universe. Outside the palace windows, the stars burned bright and endless, and somewhere among them, on a frozen moon called Hala 7, a small farmhouse still stood. Empty now, but not forgotten. A monument to the night when a shivering dragon came to a poor man's door, offering gold for shelter. And the poor man asked for nothing but the chance to help. That was where destiny was. Rewritten. That was where the universe changed. Forever. That was where humanity proved its worth. Not with weapons or wars. But with compassion.